Raj Hazra, thank you very much for joining us here to talk about collaboration in a competitive era. This came up earlier. We've talked a bit about why not to go it alone if you're a potential end user, but I think our chat ought to focus, let's call it further down in the stack, right? I did a deep dive. The last time I was really, really deeply in this stuff was in 2015, after years of kind of following it. And I had, at that stage, just starting to talk to academics when this stuff, a lot of the stuff was still only in labs. And I was told that for the first time, the drawbridges were coming up. People were starting to fence off their crown jewels. The openness in the literature was starting to sort of be crimped down. An era of competition sort of began at that low, very academic level. And it's not a surprise, right? This stuff went on in full view for so long because it was confined to labs and done by people who just wanted to see if it could be done. Mm-hmm. So we end up here now asking about collaboration. It's clear if you're an end user why you don't want to go it alone. You don't want to build your own quantum computer, okay. But down to that hardware level, the really basic level, even the algorithms level and so on, why should we expect collaboration? Why is quantum any different from other places, other industries where the crown jewels are so fiercely protected?
Great question. You said you did a deep dive. I hope you came out of it too, because I'm still deep diving and finding the
I almost went insane. Had to come out.
But to get to your question, I think the sign that, as you said, the moats are coming down or the walls are going up is a good sign to me. And I'll tell you why. It may sound counterintuitive. It means there's enough maturity, even in these nascent stages of quantum, and enough conviction behind them, whether you're doing trapped ion, whether you're in photonics, whether you're in superconducting, whether you're in neutral atoms, that there's enough faith and conviction behind it to start making these crown jewels. Otherwise, you don't know whether you have putty or jewels, right? The danger, of course, is that those crown jewels are protected in such a way that the layers above that hardware become verticalized walled gardens as well. And that's just bad for the industry. That's just bad for users, particularly who expect the industry to progress at a certain rate on the various use cases. So I think you're absolutely right. I lead Quantinuum. We believe we have the best hardware. We believe that because not only do the benchmarks show it, but our customers tell us, right? And yes, of course, we're going to put moats up around, what we believe, and we have conviction is driving towards scalable, fault-tolerant quantum computing. But that does not mean we don't understand that there's various levels of our basic building of qubits, or the qubit architecture, or the modality, as you call it, that requires us to collaborate on behalf of the user.
Which sounds great in principle, okay. So
it's not in principle. It's not just in principle. If you take a look at what we offer, it's interesting, I get asked this question quite a bit. How come your software strategy is all platform inclusive? We run on every gate-based quantum computer, and we don't favor ours in the software layer, right? We let our hardware win on its own merits. So we are a platform-inclusive company, and we see the benefits of it. We see the benefit of users not being tied down to one platform. We see the benefit of actually learning about the different modalities while you're trying to use them as a user. So it's not just in principle, it's what we do.
But where do you draw the line, though? How do you define what is, it might seem clear what these sort of crown jewels are, but where are the areas for collaboration that far down in the stack? Where do you think, for the benefit of the community as a whole, that collaboration should be standard?
I think it would be wrong to say that it's nothing in the hardware, right? I mean, there's very clearly areas of things like error correction, quantum error correction, that are, these are codes, surface codes, other codes that can run on multiple implementations.
Yeah, but that's surely a crown jewel if you crack it.
If you do, and when you do, yes, of course you have to protect it as a crown jewel because that is your differentiation, right?
You share up to the point that it actually matters to you. Is that what you're saying?
You share up to a point where you believe it is detrimental to the value creation to have it distributed broadly. Look, if I believe I can go solve, we were just hearing about BMW talk about the the oxygen reduction reaction. If we believe we have a quickest path to solving that by innovating all process of the layer, the user isn't hurt if I choose to protect it as a crown jewel. But there are, in this nascent stages of quantum, there are just some areas that if you get too wedded to a particular modality, the long-term growth and success of the technology maturity will be affected. That's our belief. So what we do is there are absolutely places, low-level hardware that we believe we've adopted the QCCD architecture. We have both the physics is not a mystery, but the controls is our secret sauce. We protect that, and we will continue to protect that as we make breakthroughs like the ones we announced last week on topological qubits, and we will continue to do that. But what we will do is not build a walled garden. What we will do is enable software that multiple parties can run on, and that using that software, they can run on other hardware platforms too.
And that benefits the makers of other platforms, you mean? I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm surprised that you don't mention, for example, things that have dogged the industry for so long, like standards and benchmarks. That's something.
I was going there because that's the easy answer, right? I mean, if we were going to have a friendly chat here, then we would have said, of course there are obvious places. You go do benchmarks. Is it CLOPS? Is it AQ? Is it, some form of quantum volume that can break the barrier of having a portion of it done in classical computing? Benchmarks is one. Algorithms is the other, right? We're already seeing that in the crypto space. We're seeing that in chemistry as you get to the next levels of phase estimation and other kinds of algorithms. Developing quantum native algorithms without being tied to the implementation of the basic modality is a great thing to collaborate on. And that's a huge focus to build up these use cases as to make quantum real. The other is policy. Right? As quantum becomes more and more central to both economic and national security interests, it will fall into the exact same kind of debates we have around, is it for the good, is it for the bad, can it be misused, should it be protected within national boundaries, right? All of those will come up, and they are coming up today, and the other places we as an industry, whether we are competing in the hardware layer or not, or some other place, should have a combined view of what's the best value of this to humanity and society, and what's the best places to regulate and where not to regulate.
So possibly competitors in the making of the qubits, but collaborators when you're on Capitol Hill and all that.
Yeah, I think there's basic modalities of the hardware as well as basic areas of essentially resilient quantum computing that is absolutely viably and justifiably someone's secret sauce. And if we want, at the end of the day, quantum to be a growing and profitable industry, then you have to have air for people to suck that, right, in terms of profits. And you have to allow differentiation. You have to allow best solution to win. And that's just all the other industries. I come from 30 years in and 20 years in high-performance computing happen the same way. Right? I mean,
so you were at Intel, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
What parallels do you see there, or instructive differences do you see in terms of development of a technology that was arguably sort of more engineering-based than science-based than quantum is? What lessons do you draw from that? What would you say?
A huge set of lessons.
Well, we've got 6 minutes. Can I have 2 lessons?
All right, I'll give you 3.
Okay.
The first
Everybody always argues for more.
The first one was, and probably least appreciated, was ecosystem building. Just, when today parallel programming is like, it's abstracted, so people actually don't understand they're doing parallel programming. Number 2 is, for those that understand it, it's pretty common. It's taught in, 101 level computer science courses today. It wasn't that way 20 years ago. It took real concerted effort to have these architectures that look very different than your the PC that you stuck your cassette tape in and played games on. It was called the Commodore.
I had a VIC-20, but yeah.
Okay. Well, you're dating yourself.
VIC-20, anybody? I hear a laugh.
So it was just building on the talent pool, and quantum shares the same problem today. It shares both a small talent pool, a finite talent pool, and a talent pool that is struggling a little bit with identity. If I went in here, what is my career path? What do I do? So that's number 1. The number 2 similarity is economic. HPC and supercomputing, by by definition, was pushing the edge of the envelope and was therefore ahead of market readiness.
Yeah, but what did collaboration look like then?
In those days, collaboration looked like a lot of application scaling work. How do you take something and run it on a massively parallel system? So collaboration looked at a lot of software, a lot of middleware, compilers and tools. I mean, how do you suddenly debug across 1,000 cores? So a lot of infrastructure for development of applications was a lot of collaboration. And then hardware actually traditionally was not the area of collaboration, right? I mean, IBM had its own, Cray had its own. And then literally the democratization was when x86 entered and Linux came about, and suddenly the two started looking like standard servers that you see today. So that, I answered your question. The third one, I think, that we're taking a lesson from is around common between supercomputing and quantum is this notion that you have to have very deep collaborations across user and the supply chain. Yeah, otherwise, it just doesn't work. These are not things you build and they come. These are the things you build together because they have belief in it. It's their algorithms, their IP that's running on it. It's their constraints that are being applied to the same use case. There is nothing called a use case in quantum. It's a use case with its own specific set of constraints. So that collaboration, that co-design of application and the infrastructure, the solution infrastructure, was critical. And I think that's going to be critical for quantum as well.
The picture that you paint makes a lot of sense, a rising tide lifting all boats, what have you. You have an enlightened vision, say. Do you think it's shared? Do you think everyone thinks about these things in this way? And if not, how to convey that message?
Good. I can't tell you everybody does. I think there's pockets of thinking, certainly like mine, that I do see in others, and I have those discussions. I think I'll remind everybody who might be straying towards the, hey, let's protect, because I think I got something great. I mean, having the world's biggest, warship or boat that's, floating in a pond is not as good as having a decent-sized boat in a large ocean to ride on. So we're all about creating that ocean here together. But remembering that we will fly, flying a boat is a bad analogy for our ocean.
Yeah, I was wondering where the metaphor would start to get mixed.
We'll sail our own boats in there too, and may the best boat win. But in an ocean, not in a pond, because we got kind of myopic too early.
Okay. This, again, the vision seems clear. And you are, I guess, going around proselytizing, telling people that they too should be thinking this way. But that sort of, we're kind of talking about within a particular stratum in the stack. There seems to be increasingly a kind of, let's call it middle layer in the stack that is developing between, essentially being a sort of conveying the ideas to potential end users. Mm-hmm. As regards collaboration, competition, in that, the way this might grow up, that there are hardware providers, there are kind of the middleman, the consultancy types, the ones who know, we'll figure it out for you, perhaps a version of Hartree, if you like. Or do you see a future in which basically the providers of hardware and software can talk directly to their users and not need that middle layer?
I think it's going to be a combination of all of those, right? I mean, let's face it, the cloud is here to stay as a service delivery architecture. You will see quantum computing as a service being offered through the cloud. You will have applications where it's absolutely user-controlled in what's called private, or and in some cases, it might even be hybrid as the quantum computing gets incorporated part of the workflow of traditional computing. So I think all of those will exist.
And as the sort of the various consolidations eventually happen, as this gets established, do you see that sort of threatening the collaboration you're talking about? We just end up in a world where we don't need that anymore because we have our big providers?
I think the key thing is, when do things collapse or converge? It's when it's proven that there's not enough sufficient differentiation between them to maintain them economically. I think some of that will happen. Will all modalities that we carry today be proven out and be specifically tuned to specific use cases and therefore have a reason to survive? I can't tell you.
But the community should and will?
I don't
You
think
describe
we
a happy, clappy
no,
community.
I know, but I don't think anything we should do for the sake of collaboration, right? Collaboration is the means to an end, not the end in itself. The means to an end is, look, if there's winning modalities, then the ecosystem will consolidate around it, right, or with it. And that may happen in hardware. We believe in the long-term scalability trend and the benefits of trapped ion. Somebody else sitting here may believe, no, it's really photonic. Someone may believe it's superconducting, and only time will tell whether all three of them should live, or one has become mature enough and versatile enough to cover all the use cases. So I firmly believe that at the end of the day, value to end users and use cases is going to be the common driver, whether we are in different modalities and different companies and have different approaches. If we don't deliver the value within the constraints of the user, we will not be relevant.
Right. You had me worried when you used the phrase, if we were going to have a friendly chat, but it turned out okay, I think. Let's have a round of applause for Raj. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.